What's going on, people? It's Glendon Cameron with How to Make a Living Without a Job. There's a big step to doing this. And many people try to leapfrog over it, but unless you handle it, it could cripple your success. But before we jump into that, you gotta pay some bills, baby. Critical thing about success is mindset. If you want to increase your mindset, check out a copy of my audiobook, The Hustler Mindset, Pimping Your Mind for Success. Now let's just jump into it. When I was making the transition from scrub, and for all practical reasons, scrub is a person that's just basically ass out due to poor decisions. That was my case, poor decisions. I had the wrong mindset. And when I started to transition, to improve my mindset, to have a better perspective on how the real world works, there was this big beast in my life. And that beast was fear. I was making moves, but there was some backsliding because I would do something right, make better decisions, and the results would be great. And that scared me. I know it sounds crazy, but it literally scared me to actually progress because I was changing. I was changing from what I was, which was a bum, a scrub, a person that was falling far from my potential. And that fear is real. And unless you address it and deal with it, it will pull you back, and you'll make, like I said, you'll make gains, you'll do the right thing, things will go well, then you would mentally trip yourself up. And I did that several times. Then one day I had a conversation with myself, and I'm going to give you the process on how to deal with fear. I sat down and I asked myself, what is going to be the worst thing to happen? Because when you make these changes and things improve, the fear, and it's in your head and it's talking, the fear is a mouthy motherfucker. The fear is like, is it going to last? Are people going to like you? I mean, it's just constantly blah, blah, yak, mouth all mouthy, tongue everlasting. It's just going on because the fear talks to you when you sleep. It talks to you in your dreams. It talks to you consistently. So you've got to deal with it, because it's not going to go anywhere. You have to pretty much grab fear by the throat and choke the shit out of it. So one of the ways to do that is to ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can happen in your process to transition from not being as successful as you want to be to actually being as successful as you want to be? Sit down and ask yourself bluntly, what is the worst thing that can happen if I start on this road? Make no mistake about it. It is a road. It is not a closed loop or a one-way street. Once you start activating success mechanisms in your life, it's going to keep happening. You're going to have new friends. You're going to potentially have a new job, a new house, a new business, new wife, new husband, even new. I'm just saying, this is some of the things that happens because you hear in our worlds today that when people become successful, they forget the people that got them there, and there should be this loyalty. But sometimes, and I can speak as a divorced person, I got left when I was broke. So there was none of this, well, I helped you get, no, none of that. I had to do this pretty much on my own with the help of mentors, customers, a partner, and so on and so forth. But there was no romantic partner that was there to help me. And one of the things I learned is that you could be often more successful by not having someone in your life because you don't have that support, but you don't have the negativity either. And the negativity can be damning. So as you get on this road of transition and almost metamorphosis, it's a scary thing because so many things in your life will change because of the success. And if the people in your circle are not supporting you, and you're not bullshitting yourself and you're not bullshitting them. You're being real. You're putting forth the effort. You're putting forth the time. And those people are not supporting you when you're doing the right thing. Those are people that don't need to be in your circle. Because if you are an addict, right, and you make the decision, the courageous decision, to no longer succumb to your proclivity of being an addict, because as I understand it, addicts are always addicts. It's just they don't act on that impulse. That's a courageous thing to do because you always have that impulse, but you don't act on it. So there's this battle. If you're with people who are not supporting that decision, it can't be in your circle. Yet many people, out of misplaced loyalty, will try to keep these people in their circle in order to keep it real, in order to be down, in order to not be so haughty-taughty. Well, let me ask you this. What is the purpose of keeping people in your life that are putting daggers and shooting you in the ankle with 9mm in your effort to succeed? Really? Why are you being loyal to people who are not loyal to your success? They don't give a fuck about your success. All they want to do is get high. All they want to do is bullshit. All they want to do is just play around. You want to be loyal to people who don't even treat themselves right? What kind of sense does that make? So that's part of the fear. So ask yourself and name out everything. If you're married, put that, hey, if I do this, I might lose. I mean, that's a very real fear. Then, as you pull those fears out of your head and put them on paper or your iPad or somewhere, and you really look at them, come up with solutions. Come up with solutions. Say, if you do this, and say you have been a yard bird, a total fuck up, and your wife is at the breaking point. And if you do one more thing wrong, no matter how good the intent is, because there's intent and then there's the practical results, and she's gone, how are you going to deal with that? You got to ask yourself, is it worth doing what you're going to do to encounter that type of potential result? She may not leave. She may. But you have to prepare a contingency plan in your mind. Because one of the things that I have learned is most of our fears will never be realized. When I wrote my first book and I put it out there, I mean, that may have actually been the thing that started the process where I ended up in the hospital with the 4 bleeding ulcers, because I freaking stressed myself out. Some of the things happened. 90% of the bad things that I thought would happen did not happen. So I placed 90% of my stress and worry on things that were not materialized. I don't think I'm alone in that aspect. So as you go through this exercise of naming your fears, being true to it, just saying, hey, this is a fear of I may lose money, fear I may be laughed at. I mean, isolate these fears, name them, call them out, and you'll see that some of those fears were living in your mind that were, 80 feet tall. When you pull them out and you really look at them, they're midgets. They're 3 feet tall, and they got a limp. It's like, oh, you're not so big and bad. It's kind of like high school reunions. Some of those people that you thought were the shit or were going to do all these wonderful things, you went back and you were like, really? I was intimidated by you? For real? Really? It's the same thing. So part of dealing with your fear is facing it before it can grow into this cancer. Because understand, in your mental environment, what's ever going on in your mental environment, that being your active mind, your subconscious mind, or your conscious mind, in there, it's real. It's like the holodeck on Star Trek. That is very, very real. And if it's in your mind and your mind treats it as real, it's going to give you the same benefits or byproducts, negative byproducts of that thought sequence. You're going to get the same thing, whether it's real or not. That's why, if you get a good book for you to get is The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph E. Murray. You can get it on Amazon. Is you will not have negative thoughts. And that's one of my journeys right now. I am working very, very hard to stay away from negativity. Not to dwell on it, not to think about it, not to touch it, not to really deal with people that live in that rim, because it can contaminate your success. So do that exercise, just the worst thing, and come up with solutions. They don't have to be effective solutions. It's a contingency plan that in your mind, when you go through the process and you start building, you look back, it's like, yeah, I've got a plan for that. It gives you confidence. Because understand, some of the things that you fear may happen. I'm not going to bullshit you and like, oh no, it'll never happen. It may happen. It may happen the first day. But instead of living in a life of terror, a self-induced terror, come up with a plan. Because I will give you one of my fears that actually came true during the negotiations and the talks for the reality show. If you didn't know, if this thing had went forward, I would have had the first storage auction reality show. One of my fears were I was going to look like an idiot. And it really held me back because I'll just be honest with you. If I had played ball and if I was pretty much like, well, hey, we'll do whatever we need to do to make this show happen. If I was that kind of guy, it probably wouldn't have went through. Probably would have went through. And I was like, just something in me just kept saying, don't do it. It was a big, big fear. And I went through the exercise and I said, okay, what if that happens? What if I become a laughing stock? What if I become a total idiot? What if I become one of those people? And one of those people is you go on a reality show and then you just lose your freaking mind. You start doing all this stuff because you had an opportunity to get a little fame, make some money, but it was more based on circumstance than really talent. Because that's one of the things that kills most reality stars is once that show goes off, they're still clinging to that because, they got there by virtue of being obscene, over the top, being married to someone. They didn't really get there based on talent. Some people did develop talent and managed to push their careers further than I thought. But 9 times out of 10, once that show's over, it's a wrap and they have to go back to a normal life. So I weighed out the consequences. I stuck to my guns. And the fear was, as I looked at the other people who did get shows, their lives, in my opinion, became fucked. Yes, they made a lot of money in a very short period of time. But that's now thinking. What about next year and the year after and the year after? At this juncture, I think Dave Hester probably wishes he had never gotten part of this because you can't go back once you cross a certain bridge. You just can't go back. So I went through the exercise and I decided that the price, if that fear was realized, and it was, and later on in some other negotiations about a different thing, that I would have just lost so much self-respect. So sometimes dealing with fear head on and really looking at it and coming up with a plan will liberate you and save you. Now, with the book, I had all these, ton of fears. All this stuff was going to happen. And some of the things happened, but I think hands down, it's in the top 10 best decisions I've ever made in my life. It's up in the top 5, writing that first book. So even though some of the fears did happen, were realized, the benefits kicked the byproducts, the negative byproducts in the ass. And I'm quite sure if you go forward and you have copious activity, because that's another thing. When you're starting something, you just can't go in there weak. You can't go in there with your chin down and your shoulders down. You've got to go in like you're going to win. You have to mentally give yourself a chance to win. Going in with negative, fear-laden thought processes is a sure way to lose. So, as you go through this deal and you ask yourself these things and you look at what can happen, what can't happen, start to think about on the positive consequences because you did something very smart. You actually looked at the downside from an honest perspective, which is something a lot of entrepreneurs don't do. They just go forward and it's going to work out. Some people have perpetual enthusiasm, and no matter how bad it gets, they can pick themselves up. That's not most people. Many people, one big disappointment, it's a wrap. They're not going to do it again. Don't be that person. Understand, sometimes being successful means getting your ass kicked a few times. And dealing with it. Learning that when you get your ass kicked, that's not the end of the world. That's not the end of your existence. That's not the end of your dream. It's just a leg in the journey. Once again, this is a journey. This is not a one-way street or just a one and done. It's a journey, and it's a long one. Now, if you want to be successful, face your fears, go through that exercise of asking yourself what's the worst thing can happen, develop a contingency plan, talk to yourself, and go through it. And understand, when you pull those fears out, that you're thinking that, 8 stories tall, some of them are going to be midgets. Now, some might be a little taller than you thought, but going through an actual process of dealing with that stuff will give you the strength to persevere, to move forward, to actually own and realize your dreams, because most people sell themselves short. So trying to create a living without a job is a very fear-laden enterprise. But in my opinion, it's a worthy enterprise because that's how I live my life. And if you go ahead and put forth that effort, really, really work hard, even if you fail, the benefits that you get from that failure are going to be greater than sitting at home on your ass wondering, if only I had tried. That's a sad, sad way to live your life. All right, this is Glendon Cameron. I will see you on the good side.